Hey guys, welcome back to Mo's Game Table. Today we're going to take a look inside In a Dark Wood, C3 module number 4, The Hofgap. This is a game designed by Fabrizio Vianello, and it is published by Thin Red Line Games. Well, we just had Fabrizio on the channel recently talking about this game, which is the latest in the C3 series. This is a series of 5 games that is all about command, control, and communications. All about the difficulties you'll have, not only in formulating a battle plan, but in carrying it out. Moving your units from one location, having them in the right posture, and prepared for combat or defense, whatever it is you need to do with them when they get to their objective. And as we talked about before on the channel, this is a series of 5 games. This is module number 4. The 5th one is still in development and will be out when that is completed, and then we'll have all 5 games in the series out. From what I understand, there are still a few copies of this available. So if you've not already jumped on getting a copy, now is the time to absolutely do so. This will be the last call. And if you don't get it now, you'll either have to get the aftermarket sales or you'll have to wait until they reprint it with Echelon 2, which won't be for a few years. So you've been warned. There is no back of the box text, but to give you the setup for what is going on here with this module, it is set July 24th, 1985. Warsaw Pact forces have crossed the inner German border and assaulted NATO positions in West Germany. The offensive against the U.S. 7th Corps sector has a first echelon of 8 Soviet and Czechoslovakian divisions and 3 main objectives. Pin the NATO forces defending the area, inflict as much casualties as possible, and force CENTAG to commit its reserves to the defense. So let's take a look inside and see what we get. All right, we get our 2d10 and baggies, deck of cards, rulebook, the scenarios and designer's notes, battlefield operations book, whole bunch of player aids, and we have the 2 charts and tables books, our counters, and our map. So let's set up the map and take a closer look at the game. And here's a look at the map that comes with the game. Just like all the other Thin Red Line games, we have coded maps, which helps add to the durability of the map, protects from accidental spills and condensation, things like that. I just really love that they do it. And it also adds a bit of a matte finish to it, which makes it easier to read everything on the map. The primary portion of the map is going to be West Germany, goes all the way to the inner German border where we have East Germany and Czechoslovakia on the right-hand side. On the left, it goes from Bad König up on the top left, down to Möglingen on the bottom left. And then, as you can see, we have major cities here like Nuremberg, Würzburg, Schweinfurt, things like that, sprinkled throughout the map. We also have plenty of towns. These brown spots here, those are just regular towns. And then we have the Main River. That is the main delineation point across the middle of the map. Beautifully done map. All of the hexes are 5 kilometers and the turns are about 3 hours. So that gives you an idea of the operations area that you're going to be facing in the map, as well as the terrain that you'll be fighting on. And as always, great job by Thin Red Line Games. Next, we'll take a look at the player aids that come with the game. On the first one, we have the ground combat chart, which is going to have your combat differential track and your combat support points. Below that, we have the combat sequence, combat modifier summary, electronic warfare effects, terrain combat modifiers, obstacle combat modifiers, the weather combat modifiers, and the chemical warfare combat modifiers. On the next sheet, we have the CENTAG Sector 2 Order of Battle. That's followed with the Central Front Sector 2 Order of Battle for the Warsaw Pact. On the next sheet, we have the Warsaw Pact time track, command points, engineer points, electronic warfare points, and air points. On the next sheet, we get the same tracks, but for the NATO forces. And the rest of the player aids are in the foldout that we saw when we took everything out of the box. Start off on the first page with the movement table, which is going to give us the breakdown of the terrain types, terrain features, obstacles, and roads, as well as the cost for mechanized, motorized, and foot in movement based on the movement mode that you're in. The right-hand side, we have the additional movement costs, force march table, and the weather table. Below that, we have the postures chart, which gives you a breakdown of the different postures, their abbreviations, the units that can do them, the movement modes you need to be in, and all the other associated aspects of postures in the game. On the next page, we have the orders chart for both NATO and Warsaw Pact. Below that, we have the bombardment table, the bombardment DRMs and results, detection level and detection modifiers. Then we have interdiction table, DRMs and results, the anti-aircraft fire table, DRMs and results. On the next sheet, we have the ground combat table and results, the terrain combat modifiers, obstacle combat modifiers, and the chemical warfare combat modifiers, as well as weather combat modifiers. On the right-hand side, we have the attacker combat support and defender combat support tables. Below that, we have the disengagement table, air points table, resupply table, and then the modifiers for all of these at the bottom. On the next sheet, we have the electronic warfare table, DRMs and results. Below that, we have the intelligence table. Right-hand side, we have the nuclear attack table, DRMs and results. At the bottom, we have the breakdown of all of the units in the game, how to read the counters, your markers, all the different administrative counters, as well as a breakdown of the unit types, unit sizes, and the nationality colors on the units in the game. On the next sheet, we have the silhouettes for both NATO and Warsaw Pact forces, as well as abbreviations of the different types of units in the game. And then below that, the postures flow chart, which gives you the combat units, support units, and your legend. And on the back of the charts and tables book, we get the detailed sequence of play. Next, we'll take a look at a few examples of the action and the event cards that come in the game. The event cards are these four here for both NATO and Warsaw Pact, and then the action cards are on the right-hand side. For example, let's take a look at this Captured Officer 1. Play during ground combat resolution. A single ground combat in Central Front Sector 2 has an additional +2, -2 combat modifier at the Warsaw Pact's choice. Mass desertions for NATO. Play during the Warsaw Pact movement phase. NATO selects up to 5 Czechoslovakian combat units and rolls a die for each selected unit. On a 1 through 3, no effect. On a 4 through 8, increase attrition by 1. On a 9 or 10, increase attrition by 2. For the actions, air mobile forces there on the right-hand side for NATO. Play after Warsaw Pact declares a prepared assault against a West German unit in Centag Sector 2. NATO player rolls a die. On a roll from 4 to 10, air mobile troops successfully deploy, and current ground combat has an additional -2 combat modifier. Spetsnaz raid below that. Play during the Warsaw Pact movement phase. Warsaw Pact targets one NATO headquarters, helicopter, or a missile unit with a detection value of 1+, and within 20 hexes from an HQ having Central Front as the top headquarters. Warsaw Pact rolls a die with a -2 DRM for each NATO combat unit in the target hex. 3 or lower, a raid failed. 4 to 5, target takes 1 attrition point. 6 to 8, target takes 2 attrition points. And a 9 or 10, target takes 3 attrition points. And all of these cards are going to be assigned to you in the scenario, so it's going to fit. It's going to be within the scenario parameters. It's not going to give you some wonky results or actions, events, things like that. This is exactly how I love to see cards used in a war game. They enhance the action, give you more friction, rather than drive the entirety of the game. Next, we'll take a look at the counter sheets that come with the game, and there are 7 different counter sheets. On the first sheet, we have a mix of US and West German forces. On the next sheet, we have some French forces along with some West German forces, and then some admin counters on the right-hand side. On the next sheet, we have Warsaw Pact forces. On the next sheet, we have the remainder of the Warsaw Pact forces, and these are the Czechoslovakian units, which we saw on the previous sheet. The darker red are going to be Czech units. And then we have some administrative counters to finish out this sheet. And then the final 3 counter sheets will all be the remainder of the administrative counters for use in the game. Next, we'll take a look at the rules. This is a 23-page full-color rulebook. Inside of the front cover, we have the table of contents listing out all the different sections of rules, their subsections, and their associated page numbers. Then we get into the introduction, which explains to you the overview of the C3 series. We get to the overview itself, which gives you the overview of this specific module. Then we have the game equipment, general rules, your game scale, time and turn format, map, definition of terms, fractions and die rolls, and then we get to the sequence of play. Then we have the postures explained to you, posture changes, posture transitions, additional capabilities and limitations, stacking, movement, moving your unit, calculating your movement cost. And we have road movement, delayed movement, forced march, blocking units, disengagement, river crossings, hasty crossings, prepared crossings. Then we have the Warsaw Pact Advance Axis, attrition, attrition limit, attrition points, how you remove attrition by resupply and by resting and refitting, as well as headquarters attrition removal. Then we have Warsaw Pact Replacement Doctrine, headquarters, headquarter posture, headquarters command range, headquarters and ground combat, headquarters destruction, reconstruction, and command points, as well as how to track your command points. Then we have orders, the order chits, formation and attached units, support headquarters, issuing your orders, executing your orders, revealing them, and then completing and canceling your orders. Then we have ground combat sequence. All the steps are broken down for you. Attack type, retreat before combat, defending units, combat strength, combat modifiers, combat results, and then the retreat after combat. Breakthroughs, advance after combat, combat support, artillery combat support, helo combat support, air combat support, and then artillery, helicopters, air points, air sectors, using your air points phase, CAS areas, transferring your air points, bombardment, unit bombardment, bridge bombardment, interdiction, Lars minefields, which is an optional rule, anti-aircraft fire versus air points, anti-aircraft fire versus helicopters, anti-aircraft fire resolution, detection levels. You also have another optional rule here for SIGINT, electronic warfare, EW allocation, deallocation, resolution, EW effects, intelligence, which is also an optional rule, signals intelligence, recon intelligence, intelligence effects. Then we have chemical warfare, how to initiate your chemical warfare, the different agent types available to you, chemical weapons effects, nuclear warfare, initiating nuclear warfare, delivering nuclear weapons, resolving nuclear attacks, nuclear contamination, and then the integrated battlefield, which is an optional rule here. Then we have weather determination, weather effects on movement, weather effects on ground combat, weather effects on air points, weather effects on helicopters. Then we have supply, tracing your supply lines, supply sources, supply hubs, defensive works, and then building your defensive works, destroying them, defensive work effects, reducing your defensive works. Then we get to bridges, permanent bridges, ribbon bridges, panel bridges, reinforcements, air reinforcements, EW, engineer, command point, and ground reinforcements, West German Territorial Forces, West German Tile Active Battalions, event cards, action cards, independent formations, sappers, sapper allocation, deallocation, there's sapper effects, and then the airborne troops to finish out the rules. Then we are at the back of the rulebook. Next up, we have the scenarios and designer's notes. This is a 27-page full-color book. Inside of the front cover, we have the table of contents listing out all the different scenarios, the campaigns, as well as the designer's notes and their associated page numbers. We start off with the additional scenario rules: civilian panic, surprise level, strategic surprise, operational surprise or no surprise, Iron Curtain, Warsaw Pact bridges, ribbon and panel bridges, U.S. 5th Corps front continuity, West German 2 Corps front continuity, the French Army, French Separate Command, French Divisions, French Air Mobile Operations, French 11E Parachutists, Canadian 4th Brigade, West German 12th Panzer, NATO Red Lines, Warsaw Pact entry, Warsaw Pact echelons, geographical objectives, and then winning the war, which is an optional rule. Then we have it for NATO and Warsaw Pact, and then we have the Armageddon rule, which Fabricio thought was funny that I said it was pretty neat to add that in there, but I still do think it is a great thing to have in there, because if you haven't seen the other video where we talked about it, here in winning the war, all or nothing scenario, it is hard to avoid the temptation to immediately escalate to chemical or nuclear warfare. This rule should help keep contact with reality, but can be ignored if both players are confident in the human capability to voluntarily limit the level of horror during a war. Number 1, immediately after the first release of chemical or nuclear weapons, the releasing side must roll a die. On a roll of 1 to 3, war escalates to strategic nuclear exchange, and the releasing side loses with a total defeat. Number 2, the die roll is made only once at the first release of any weapon of mass destruction. Subsequent releases are not affected. So I think that's pretty cool. You get in there and you have that 30% chance of losing by escalating to nuclear and chemical warfare. It definitely does keep you in check as far as whether you want to use those, but depends on your level of risk, if you're willing to do that, then you have the option of going for it. Start with the scenarios. Scenario 1, just a second away. It's going to give you the section of the map that you're going to be using is the setup for Warsaw Pact and for NATO. And this is where you're going to see if you have any of those action or event cards, they'll be listed in here. Then we have the special scenario rules, additional rules that'll be used, Warsaw Pact supply, NATO supply, and the victory conditions, as well as a listing of all the victory points for each of the objectives. That'll be the same in all of these scenarios. Then we have scenario 2, shortcut to Schweinfurt. Scenario 3, where the forest whispers. And then scenario 4, Operation Marsh Harrier. Then we get to the campaign where you have the whole map and you can see the axis of advance by the Warsaw Pact right there on the map. Campaign 1, the main problem. Actually, the mine problem, because it is dealing with the Main River. Campaign 2, 1 minute to midnight. You can see all the information from both sides set up. Then we get to the designer's notes by Fabrizio, where he's going to give you his design intent and reasons for what he did in this module, as well as the overall series itself. Then we have the developer's notes with Tony Morfitt. Then we have a bibliography. Then we are at the back of the scenario book. And lastly, we have the Battlefield Operations book. This is an 8-page full-color book, and it's going to give you a collection of illustrated examples. These are not going to be illustrated examples of how to play right or best. These are illustrated examples on how to play correctly. And it's going to break all the steps down for different aspects of movement, things like that, so you understand how to do them in the game. We have movement, column movement, illustrated example up there at the top, tactical movement, with an illustrated example, deployed movement, enemy screening, then your orders, how to issue your orders, how to reveal your orders, execute your orders, complete your orders, and then your authorized posture changes. Then we have unauthorized posture change, bombardment, ground combat, your assaults, how those are handled, retreat after combat, breakthroughs, advance after combat, and then operational planning, your retrogrades, tactical movements, area defense, movement to contact, all explained to you with illustrations. So this will definitely help you learn all the mechanical aspects of the game. But like everything else, you're going to have to go out there and play it and learn for yourself, usually the hard way, on how to play it best. And that is a look at everything you get inside of In a Dark Wood, C3 Module 4, The Hoff Gap. This is a game designed by Fabrizio Vianello, and it is published by Thin Red Line Games. Well, it's great to see Module 4 now out of the projected 5-module series released. The next one, the final one, should be released in about 18 months to 2 years. That's kind of the time frame he's been following. And when he was on Whiskey Charlie earlier this month, we were talking about the Dogs of War, which was the second module in the series, and that is going to be released. The second echelon is going to be released probably this year. So if you have not gotten the Dogs of War, it is coming out. If you want to get the updated version, it should be out this year. So definitely something to keep track of if you are a fan of this series, or if you're curious about getting into this series, because these games do go very fast. Like I said at the very beginning of the video, there are some copies left, not many, but a few copies left. So if they've not all been allocated, the only way to find out is to contact Fabrizio on the Thin Red Line website or on the Facebook groups, is to email him right away, let him know you want a copy, they'll reserve it and everything else. These are small print runs, so you got to jump on them right away if you want to get a copy. But it's great to see Thin Red Line Games doing all they've done with the hypothetical World War III. The 1985 series is fantastic, and now you've got the C3 series, which delves into different aspects of the same hypothetical war. This is command control communications. This is very simulation heavy. This is not just your standard war game. Only 23 pages of rules, but there's a lot of complexity with the different layers and then the coordination of all those layers together and the things that you have to take into account. And not only going into, battle with a battle plan, but then adapting to the changing situation as the game unfolds. Because as you're playing, things the opponent does are going to make you need to change, but things you do or make mistakes on, they're going to cause you to change as well. And I think that's really cool because you're having to look at combat through a different lens. And I really enjoy that about this series. And I think that's what has the biggest attraction for people who are simulation fans with this series. 1985 is also a fantastic series, and all of these games are worth getting. But like I said, this is definitely simulation heavy, so you need to go into it with a plan and be adaptable with your plan throughout the course of the game. But absolutely worth the price of admission. So looking forward to Module 5 when it is released in about a year and a half, 2 years, and then having all 5 together where you can play them coordinated, all 5, or you can play maybe 1 or 2 modules together, link them up and play with a couple of people at a con and have a great time with it. But like I said, if you are still looking to get a copy of In a Dark Wood, definitely reach out to Fabrizio and see if he's got a copy available. There are a few left. So if you can jump on them, now's the time. Otherwise, you're going to miss out and you're going to have to wait till the second echelon, which will be a couple of years until that's released. Well, I hope that helps you guys out if you've been curious about this one. If you have any comments or questions, post them down below. Thanks for tuning in, guys. See you next time.